turns into a box office flop like we've seen in the movie theater, like Supergirl, for example. I don't know if anybody noticed it. It's actually a follow-up to last year's Superman, which did decently well, but not well enough to make $1 billion. So even if our heroes, our DC and Marvel heroes, are not doing well, what does that mean for our country? I don't think anybody's ever thought about it, but I think the critical drinker probably knows more about it than I do. But as someone that actually grew up with superhero movies in this generation, even that's not gonna save the country. But maybe it did at one point. But in today's shitification of our economy and country, not working. So now they're moving into more options like fear mongering, doom scrolling, maybe in some cases, the simplification of OnlyFans, which we will get into in later weeks, which I think is quite important because it is a symptom of what is actually going on within our fallen Western society that was built up post World War II. I think the World War II society is pretty much about to die. Because once that generation is gone, all hell breaks loose. And I think that's exactly what we're seeing right now. It's just the question is it going to keep on getting worse? Or is something going to change like what just happened to Germany? Which is an indicator that the West is changing. So I know that there is still hope in France and Germany. There's still some hope in the Netherlands over there, but the UK and the US, that's a whole other story right down there. The Anglo-Saxon world over there. Includes Canada, Australia, New Zealand, of course, with the exception of the Cayman Islands and some of the British islands. They're exempted from it, even though they're a part of the same brand. It's kind of like a company. And it's kind of like what happened with Capital One and Discovery. For those of you who don't know, Discovery was bought out by Capital One, which the only reason why I'm using that analogy is to compare from one aspect to the other. If the whole thing falls off, everything falls. And if one part falls and the other stands, then it's just a half collapse, which, as in Western Europe as a whole, we're in the half collapse stage. We're not in a full collapse like we did in 1929. So if this continues, it's probably going to be similar to what happened almost 100 years ago, but this time it's going to be even crazier than our great-great-grandparents' experiences, or whatever, depending on which generation you're in. But I think it's just best to adapt into changing environments. And if you're not able to do that, then what are you doing? And again, I think it's best to actually learn from experience and learn from the best of the best, like this guy right here. He may not be 100% correct, but I do think he is correctly describing the diagnosis, but the solution is possible. And that's a big, big leap from my last video, but we got to look for solutions that actually work on an individual level. So I think it's about time that we all adapt into changing environments, even if we're not comfortable with it at the very beginning. But once you learn to live day by day, you got nothing to fear but yourself.
Telling you, if you have just one of those things, one passport, one tax system, one identity, then you are exposed. And I think what this war is exposing is the idea that your identity is going to start to come more and more into the equation. The days of labeling all Iranians are bad and all Russians and Belarusians, they're all terrorists, like they're all evil people, but our people are all perfect. Like the rest of the world is not buying that. And a lot of the trade, almost all of the growth is happening in that rest of the world. And so you're going to be exposed because basically this whole premise on which the country since post-war World War II was built is now shattering. It's becoming pretty apparent to everybody around the world that's going to have a negative impact on Americans. Point number two from Tucker's commentary is that the world runs through fragile choke points and they can break. One of the things he focused heavily on was the Strait of Hormuz because it's this tiny little bottleneck, kind of the edge of the Persian Gulf, about 20% of oil and something like a third of all the natural gas. But it doesn't take much to disrupt that, as that we've seen. And so going back to the point of fragility, there's been this view in the West that anybody we want to go to war with, like, of course we're going to win because we're the tough guys. And, I grew up watching U.S. Army strong commercials. And, you get kind of brainwashed, to be honest, to say, my country, we can take out anybody. We're tough. And it becomes kind of this kind of chest pounding that the people who don't like what I say, go where you're treated best. Our country's the best. We took Maduro out when he was sleeping in Venezuela. We're tough guys. Oh, okay. But what you can't do is control fragile choke points that allow your own citizens to continue to have access to resources, because you may have oil in the United States, but it's globally traded commodity. So if you have to sell it, your own people are going to be paying a higher price. That's going to have an impact on businesses. When business goes down, what do people do? They vote more left wing. They say, let's bring someone in to raise taxes on the evil rich. All this stuff has an impact, even if it doesn't really directly impact you economically. You and me, $4 a gallon gas. Okay, whatever, we'll pay it. But what is it to everybody around you, and what environment does that create? All because the world runs through fragile choke points that can break, that are very easily disrupted. And this idea of global order maintained by the West, the whole reason that BRICS came about is a lot of...
Are you tired of your corporate overlords owning you? It's time that you own your freedom with RetroFocus 85. It will save 20% of your entire order, regardless if you're new and old customer. You get to apply this promo code on nomadicpath.com. And if you act right now before September 15th, 2026, you will actually save a significant amount of money, your freedom and liberty, and your life. Act right now before September 15th, 2026.
We're also seeing China basking in right now is, we're just going to play the pragmatic people here, and we're going to get more talent to come to our country. We're going to amp up our place in the AI race. We're going to amp up our place in the chips and rare earths and all those things. China's just saying more people are going to choose us as the pragmatic one. What does that mean for particularly the U.S. in this case, but other Western economies in general, when you realize that the global economy is not as resilient as you thought, when those players that were supposed to keep it perfectly running in an order are exposed to no longer be doing so. And so
that is a very good question. What will happen when the Western economy actually completely collapses, or, in his point of view, gets exposed by the choke points? And that's exactly what happened to the Strait of Hormuz, and it's kind of an ongoing thing at this point. It's literally up and down, up and down, up and down. I think people are starting to get really, really tired of that BS right now. As someone that actually used to be a full-blown two-party left versus right guy, I can tell you one thing: it's all BS. The whole political system that we all grew up in is no longer putting the people first. No longer. So, as I said before, you got to adapt to changing times, or otherwise, you're not going to be able to actually adapt to new opportunities or even new challenges that you thought were impossible. Which, unfortunately, in my situation, it actually happened multiple times, over and over again, especially as a content creator. And as I said in the last video, not all consulting firms and media are innocent either. And let's be fair, they play a huge role in the war machine as well. They do. And I've said it before, McKinsey & Company is one of them, BlackRock, Vanguard. When you look at companies like that, they're pretty much a part of a dying legacy. They're a part of it. Let's remember, they're US companies. Well, a part of the old one. And you gotta let the old die in order for the new to be reborn. And guess what? That's what happened to Russia and China at different points in history. And guess what? They were once like the US empire is right now. They were once just like that. The old has to go in order for the new to be reborn, which means the nomads will never stop. Which, by the way, I think that's an idea for my apparel, shoe, and clothing collection, which I think emphasizes this point very clearly. I don't know exactly when that product will be released, but I can say one thing is for sure is that they never stop exploring. They never stop. And I think it's a very true statement, and it's a telling of what is actually happening. And look, when someone is not taking the opportunity, a new person will take it instead, which is where regret comes in. And it's kind of the same thing with location independence. It's the same thing with anything in life. I mean, as someone that is now about to be turning 25 very, very soon, which I still can't believe that I am getting that close to the first quarter of the century, time just keeps moving and it never stops. And yes, there will be hard times and there will be good times during those times. And I ended up experiencing both of those things at one time. Sometimes it happens more than you think. When something doesn't go your way, do you stop or do you keep going? A lot of people will stop because they're afraid of what this inner fear is going to look like. But there are some people that discover that inner fear or that dark blackness of fear is just an illusion if you just overcame it and confront it directly with your actions. And I think this has happened to investors and entrepreneurs many more times than usual, at least within my research and within my personal life. And you know what? That's held me back for the past 5 years. I could tell you, stepping into being a senator was, at 18 years old in college, was not easy. I had to write this, I don't know, that 2 to 4 paragraphs of my speech. And I even talked about making my college great again and telling jokes about chicken nuggets. I mean, seriously, that is literally an example of confronting fear right away. And let's be fair, I think there are many, many stories that are just like this. And not only does that happen in life, this also happens way more. It's just nobody is going to admit it. And the truth is that it's going to happen much more than you think it is. And no, I'm not here to lecture. I'm just telling you with my personal experience and with the title of this video, which, by the way, I want to make sure it actually gets it out there as many people as possible. So without further ado, let's continue with the video.
When these things break, it's not just going to be over there. You're going to see the consequences financially, politically, and you're going to see a continued decline of the U.S. empire because the emperor has no clothes anymore. People, domestically, from fuel to food, their own currency stability. Like if you ever do anything, you think, oh, I don't travel internationally. The U.S. dollar is stability. Yes, you can export more stuff, But when nobody wants to buy your stuff, or fewer people want to buy your stuff, like China says, yeah, we don't want your soybeans anymore. We're gonna take a geopolitical position. We don't want your soybeans. Lower U.S. dollar values doesn't really help that. When you have to buy stuff from other places, because even made in America stuff has like parts brought in from other countries, your currency stability is going to be an issue. By the way, people aren't going to want to buy your treasury bonds and give you cheap money to borrow, which is going to drive up borrowing costs. You're already adding like $1 trillion every 4 to 5 months. What's going to happen when like all those things continue to spiral and people are suffering in the country? They already are. Tucker Carlson talks about it.
If you enjoy videos like this, and you're actually interested in videos like this one that just happened recently, do me a favor, like and share and comment down below and subscribe to this channel right here and right now. With that in mind, I'll see you in the next video, Innovator.